What's up, you guys? Welcome back. It is your boy Arturo. We're gonna be reading the Four Loves, finishing chapter 1, which is the introduction, and we're picking off where we left off, which was on page 3, in the bottom half of the page. Again, hope you guys been liking these videos. Gonna try and make a book review after I do this little read along. I think it's good to read. I think it's good to have that little time for yourself, reflect. So please come and join me, drink some tea, put me on the background, because we're just going to be reading this book and giving our thoughts in between passages. So got here my little cup of water. I won't be being as dehydrated, and let's go. So where we left off yesterday is defining different kinds of love. C.S. Lewis describes love as a need love or a want love, but nonetheless, he likes to compare the need love to God. He's a very religious man. He recently just got back to it. If you miss some of that context, please make sure you check out that first video. It should be somewhere in my channel. But without further ado, let's just hop right into it. But thirdly, we come to something far more important. Every Christian would agree that a man's spiritual health is exactly proportional to his love for God. But man's love for God, from the very nature of the case, must always be very largely, and often be entirely, a need love. This is obvious when we implore forgiveness for our sins, or support in our tribulations. But in the long run, it is perhaps even more apparent in our growing, for it ought to be growing. Awareness that our whole being, by its very nature, is one vast need. Incomplete, preparatory, empty yet cluttered, crying out for Him who can untie things that are now knotted together and tie up things that are still dangling loose. I do not say that a man can never bring to God anything at all but sheer need love. Exalted souls may tell us of a reach beyond that, but they would also, I think, be the first to tell us that those heights would cease to be true. Graces would become Neoplatonic, or finally, diabolical illusions. The moment a man dared to think that he could live on them and henceforth drop out the element of need, the highest, says the imitation, does not stand without the lowest. It would be a bold and silly creature that came before its creator with the boast, I am no beggar, I love you disinterestedly. Those who come nearest to a gift love for God will next moment, even at the very same moment, be beating their breasts with the publican, and laying their indigence before the only real giver. And God will have it so. He addresses our need love. Come unto me, all ye that travail and are heavy laden. Or in the Old Testament, open your mouth wide and I will fill it. I think we read this passage last time, but I guess my reflection from it is that you're supposed to give everything to God, to fully be embraced by Him. People who go to Him just for as a gift love, the next moment they will start doing something that will go against God's will. So that's kind of what I got out of that passage. Maybe could be wrong. Wanting to see what your thoughts about it is, but moving right along. Thus one need love, the greatest of all, either coincides with or at least makes a main ingredient in man's highest, healthiest, and most realistic spiritual condition. A very strange corollary follows. Man approaches God most nearly when he is, in one sense, least like God. For what can be more unlike than fullness and need sovereignty and humility, righteousness and penitence, limitless power, and a cry for help. This paradox staggered me when I first ran into it. It all wrecked all my previous attempts to write about love. When we face it, something like this seems to result. We must distinguish two things which might both possibly be called nearness to God. One is likeness to God. God has impressed some sort of likeness to himself, I suppose, in all that he has made, space and time in their own fashion, mirror his greatness, all life, his fecundity, animal life, his activity. Man has a more important likeness than these by being rational. Angels, we believe, have likeness which man lacks, immortality and intuitive knowledge. In that way, all men, whether good or bad, all angels, including those that fell, are more like God than animals are. Their natures are in this sense nearer to the divine nature. But, secondly, there is what we may call nearness of approach. If this is what we mean, the states in which a man is nearest to God are those in which he is most surely and swiftly approaching his final union with God, vision of God, and enjoyment of God. As soon as we distinguish nearness by likeness and nearness of approach, we see that they do not necessarily coincide. They may not. Perhaps an analogy may help. Let us suppose that we are doing a mountain walk to the village which is our home. At midday, we come to the top of the cliff where we are, in space, very near it because it is just below us. We could drop a stone into it, but we are no Craigsmen. We can't get down. We must go a long way around, 5 miles maybe. At many points during the detour, we shall statically be far further from the village than we were when we sat above the cliff, but only statically. In terms of progress, we shall be far nearer our baths and teas. Since God is blessed, omnipotent, sovereign, and creative, there is obviously a sense in which happiness, strength, freedom, and fertility, whether of mind or body, and in that way proximities to God, but no one supposes that the possession of these gifts has any necessary connection with our sanctification. No kind of riches is a passport to the kingdom of heaven. At the cliff's top, we are near the village, but however long we sit there, we shall never be any nearer to our bath and our tea. So here the likeness, and in that sense nearness to God, which God has conferred upon certain creatures in certain states of those creatures, is something finished, built in. What is near him by likeness is never by the fact alone going to be any near. But nearness of approach is, by definition, increasing nearness. And whereas the likeness is given to us and can be received with or without thanks, can be used or abused, the approach, however initiated and supported by grace, is something we must do. Creatures are made in a varying ways, images of God, without their own collaboration or even consent. It is not so that they become sons of God, and the likeness they receive by sonship is not that of images or portraits. It is in one way more than likeness for its unison or unity with God in will, but in this consistent with all differences we have been considering. Hence, a better writer said, our imitation of God in this life, that is, our willed imitation of as distinct from any of the likeness which he has impressed upon our natures or states, must be an imitation of God incarnate. Our model is Jesus, not only of Calvary, but of workshop, the roads, the crowds, the clamorous demands, and surely oppositions, the lack of peace and privacy, the interruptions. For this, so strangely unlike anything we can attribute to the divine life in itself, is apparently not only like, but is the divine operating under human conditions. So, wanted to take a little break. I think this is a good time. We did get through like 2 pages. Honestly, dude, he was going so strong, man. He was going so strong, but he is drilling into Christianity, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. It's just like when we talk about biblical figures and try to put it into words, these concepts are so big that it's very hard for a typical reader to really follow. I don't know if you got any of what I just fucking said. I'm having trouble even processing it, just reading this shit out loud. So it's like, what the fuck is going on? So if there's any of you guys at home feeling frustrated, it's okay. It's okay. Hopefully, the more that we move on to this, we can paint a better picture. And the dots only make sense. You can only connect the dots looking backwards, kind of like a scatter graph, but you can't connect them looking forward. So let's keep going. And, it looks like he's still talking more about God. He's using different analogies as like being closer, being like comparing it to tea and baths. Like, I mean, hey man, I know that like the world that he was living in, the world that he grew up in, which was like in 1898 to like 1968, 64 or something like that. This dude was going through a lot. I mean, I bet like he saw 2 world wars. He thought that, things were just developing so fast around him. But like, I think in this modern world, the world's even more fucked up, dude. Like, it's more corrupted, and it's just like, I feel, it's just whack, bro. It really is. And for me, it's just hard to, because there's even more, like, there's 2 wars. It's not a world war, but I mean, it's war that, shouldn't be happening. It's, whatever. Anyway. Moving on, I must now explain why I have found this distinction necessary to any treatment of our loves. St. John saying that God is love has long been balanced in my mind against the remark of a modern author that love ceases to be a demon only when he ceases to be a god, which, of course, can be restated in the form begins to be a demon the moment he begins to be a god. This balance seems to me an indispensable safeguard. If we ignore it, the truth that God is love may slyly come to mean for us the converse, that love is God. I suppose that everyone who has thought about the matter will see what the author meant. Every human love at its height has a tendency to claim for itself a divine authority. Its voice tends to sound as if they were the will of God himself. It tells us not to count the cost. It demands of us a total commitment. It attempts to override all other claims and insinuates that any action which is sincerely done for love's sake is thereby lawful and even meritorious. That erotic love and love of one's country may thus attempt to become gods is generally recognized, but family affection may do the same. So, in a way, may friendship. I shall not elaborate the point, for it will meet us again and again in later chapters. Now, it must be noticed that natural loves make this blasphemous claim not when they are in their worst, but when they are in their best. Natural condition. When they are what our grandfathers called pure or noble, this is especially obvious in the erotic sphere. A faithful and genuinely self-sacrificing passion will speak to us with what seems to be the voice of God. Merely animal or frivolous lust will not. It will corrupt its addict in dozens of ways, but not in that way. A man may act upon such feelings, but he cannot revere them any more than a man who scratches reveres the itch. A silly woman's temporary indulgence, which is really self-indulgence to a spoiled child, her living doll, while the fit lasts, is much likely to become a god than deep, narrow devotion of a woman who quite really lives for her son. And I am inclined to think that the sort of love for a man's country, which is worked up by beer and brass bands, will not lead him to do much harm or much good for her sake. It will probably be fully discharged by ordering another drink and joining in on the chorus. And this, of course, is what we ought to expect. Our loves do not make their claim to divinity until the claim becomes plausible. It does not become plausible until it is in them a real resemblance to God, to love himself. Let us here make no mistake. Our gift loves are really God-like, and among our gift loves, those are most God-like, which are most boundless and unwearied in giving. All the things the poets say about them are true. Their joy, their energy, their patience, their readiness to forgive, their desire for the good of the beloved. All this is a real and all but adorable image of the divine life. In its presence, we are right to thank God, who has given such power to men. We may say quite truly and intelligible sense that those who love greatly are near to God, but of course it is nearness by likeness. It will not of itself produce nearness of approach. The likeness has been given us. It has no necessary connection with that slow and painful approach which must be our own, though by no means our unaided task. Meanwhile, however, the likeness is splendor. That is why we may mistake like for the same. We may give our human loves the unconditional allegiance which we owe only to God. Then they become gods. Then they become demons. Then they will destroy us and also destroy themselves. For natural loves that are allowed to become gods do not remain loves. They are still called so, but can become, in fact, complicated forms of hatred. Our need loves may be greedy and exacting, but they do not set up to be gods. They are not near enough by likeness to God to attempt that. It follows from what has been said that we must join neither the idolaters nor the debunkers of human love. The idolatry, both of erotic love and domestic affection, was the great error of the 19th century literature. Browning, Kingsley, Patmore sometimes talk as if they thought that falling in love was the same thing as sanctification. The novelist habitually opposed to the world, not the kingdom of heaven, but home. We live in the reaction against this. The debunkers stigmatize as slush and sentimentality a very great deal of what their fathers praise of love. They are always pulling up and exposing the grubby roots of our natural loves. But I take it we must listen neither to the overwise nor to the overfoolish giant. The highest does not stand without the lowest. A plant must have roots below as well as sunlight above, and roots must be grubby. Much of the grubbiness is clean dirt. If only you will leave it in the garden, and not keep on sprinkling it over the library table. The human loves can be glorious images of divine love. No less than that, but also no more. Proximities of likeness, which is one instance may help, another may hinder. Proximity of approach, sometimes perhaps they have not very much to do with it either way. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes chapter 1, the introduction. And boy, oh boy, was that a roller coaster to strap into. And I think there was just, he was trying to differentiate. And I think he laid out the course or the canvas really well. At least I was able to get a better picture of what he was trying to communicate. And really, like, if you love someone, you do have the power to kind of idolize them as God. And that relationship is not healthy. Because once you start doing that, you start really just depending a lot on your partner. And yes, you're supposed to do a lot of things with them and be good with them, but like once they become gods, they can become demons and they can fuck up your life, man. I really do think that maybe C.S. Lewis was like trying to describe like toxic relationships, and in that time, especially in that last paragraph, he mentions the literary authors, and that's something I wasn't expecting. That he was actually calling out a lot of these people writing these stories. I almost felt like this was directed towards them, but it's just we'll learn a little bit more about his message and his perspective, but later on in the book. I think that was a really interesting kind of tidbit. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know what you guys think down below. That was it for me today, and I'll catch you tomorrow with chapter 2. Just real quick, I guess we can look at it. Chapter 2 starts at page 13, and it ends at page 39. So we got a couple of pages there, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. We are on this road together. So appreciate you guys. Hopefully I look a little bit more clear. I adjusted my bit rate and just trying to get a little bit better in using OBS and other programs like this. So thank you. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.